So let's talk about the election. Where things stand right now. Again, Vice President Biden at this hour, I couldn't believe these numbers, has received more votes for president than any candidate in U.S. history. Yeah, more than FDR at the height of his popularity. And the guy won 4 terms, right? Think about the people that are on Mount Rushmore. Joe Biden has received more of the popular vote than any candidate in U.S. history. And yet, we still don't know who the president is. That's how close things are right now. And there's actually some pretty troubling numbers that we're now seeing in these exit polls for Democrats. I saw some comment from a viewer earlier that said, Clayton, I hear you're kind of bashing Biden. I'm not bashing Biden. And he said, by the way, this guy's going to be the president. Okay, he might be. But look at all of the damage that the Democrats did by not having a solid progressive platform. Look what they could have accomplished and they didn't. How the Senate is sitting right now, we'll get to these Senate numbers coming up in just a few minutes. 47 right now in the Senate. We don't know. There's no blue wave. Mitch McConnell won. Joni Ernst won again. Susan Collins in Maine won. These are Lindsey Graham. These were, quote, vulnerable Republican senators. Yeah, they coasted to a victory. So I'm not saying Joe Biden. What the Biden camp did was wrong, replaying 2016. But they didn't increase their base. They didn't increase their tent. In fact, Donald Trump, the Republicans actually increased the size of their tent. African Americans, women went for Trump in overwhelming numbers in a way that they didn't in 2016. Trump doubled the number of African American women that voted for him from 4% to 8%. 1 out of every 10 black women in America voted for Trump. 1 out of every 5 voted for Trump. Black men voted for Trump. Up to almost 20% of black men voted for Trump. So this Democratic Party that's supposed to be inclusive, it's supposed to care about the voice of the downtrodden, of the minorities, of people who can't get a leg up in this society, the workers going for Trump. So there needs to be a postmortem here for the Democrats, and they need to be looking long and hard at their party's messaging and platform going forward. Maybe Joe Biden can be that president that is concerned about the African American community, not just pays lip service to it, but actually does something about it. The fact that 1 out of every 5 black men voted for Trump. And Democrats just think, you know what? Every African American is just going to vote for me. So we just got that locked up. That's in the can. We got that taken care of. Not the case. These numbers are interesting. So I love looking at these exit polls because it really is like a real-time postmortem of where they spent their money, where they wasted their money, and what Democrats believed versus actually what happened. So where are we right now? Let's take a look at the map, folks. Here we are. This is the current map. Let me zoom in on this a little bit. These are the current numbers. It's interesting to watch some of the different networks who don't want to call Arizona yet. So right now you have like CNN that's not calling Arizona for Biden. And maybe they're smart about that. Fox News called the other night on election night, called Arizona for Biden. And what's been happening over the past few hours is they are now counting these absentee ballots and mail-in ballots. The very ballots that Trump didn't want to be counted, has not wanted to be mailed in. Well, guess what? They're now trending towards Trump in Arizona, Maricopa County, etc. So Trump is getting closer and closer to potentially forcing a recount in that state, or potentially winning Arizona after all. Even after Fox News and the Associated Press called Arizona for Biden, these numbers, look, 88% of expected vote in. We still have 12% to go. These are current numbers right now, 11 electoral votes up for grabs. Same thing is true of Nevada. It's, yes, scaling blue at this hour, but 75% of the vote, we will finally have those numbers in from Nevada a little bit later today. They started counting again today. They took like a day off. But the real thing to watch right now, folks, is Georgia. Because what's different about Arizona and Georgia is that the early votes sort of leaned towards Trump, 49.6%. But as these late votes have been counted and slowly trickling in, it's starting to trend Biden. We could end up with a near statistical tie in the state of Georgia, which case would automatically throw it into a recount. So by all accounts, because you have to be within 0.5%, by all accounts, Georgia is heading to a recount. By all accounts, Wisconsin is already heading to a recount. So we will see recounts in a number of different states. This is not just going to be one Florida recount like in 2000. There's going to be multiple recounts. So Pennsylvania, though, this is the big one right now. Pennsylvania is the big boy because all of this other talk about Georgia, North Carolina, Nevada goes out the window. If Biden wins Pennsylvania, and we should likely know Pennsylvania probably by later tonight, that's it. If Biden wins Pennsylvania, it's over for Trump. Now, what are it's interesting to think about the current roads. If Arizona goes back to in the Trump column and Nevada slips into the Trump column, then his road to victory can be paved with Georgia, North Carolina, and then he would also have to win Pennsylvania. But Joe Biden's road, so to speak, he has multiple routes. Like if he was pulling up his Apple Maps, he was like, hey, I want to go to that location. It's Apple Maps is going to give him like 3 different routes to get there. One will have tolls. The ETA on one of them will take 2 minutes longer than the other one. But nevertheless, Biden has like 3 different Apple Maps routes to victory right now. Trump won at this hour. So it's not looking favorable for President Trump to finish this off. But we want to wait till every vote is counted. And right now, these election workers, these volunteers have been doing an amazing job. They've been up for hours and hours going through these ballots. The thing in Pennsylvania you have to remember is they don't start counting those absentee and mail-in ballots. For instance, I mailed my ballot in Pennsylvania. Well, on election night, they hadn't even started counting my ballot. Members of the military from overseas, same thing. Those ballots don't get counted until after the same day vote takes place. The voting is tabulated. So they won't even start counting those until all of those votes on election day are done. Then they start ripping the paper open and start going through those ballots. And imagine how tedious this is. You have to rip open that secrecy envelope, which is on the outside, then pull out the actual ballot, which is in another envelope, then rip that open, and then that goes into a machine that counts the ballots. Hundreds of thousands of those. That has been wrapping up in Arizona. They've gotten through that now. Pennsylvania still has hundreds of thousands to complete. And the real question is, how will those shake out? Right now, we knew that this was going to happen in Pennsylvania, that Pennsylvania would look red maybe for a day or two, and then it was going to start to trend blue in Philadelphia County. And all of those votes in Philadelphia County, that is a heavily Democratic area, that have not been counted yet. So that's where you're going to start to see Pennsylvania unfolding. The Trump campaign has already filed law.
I'd say word is too that, because they, all these legal actions they're taking, that alone can push this into December.
Right. Because a couple of lawsuits have already been filed. So we already have lawsuits unfolding in Georgia, Pennsylvania. We don't have the final votes yet, though. And so part of the lawsuit is that they want to be able to be in the room counting these votes and have oversight over
Giuliani announced this morning that it's going to be in Arizona, Michigan, Wisconsin, Pennsylvania. That's where, those are some of the places that they're going to take legal action.
Yeah. And of course, President Trump yesterday saying that he was going to take this all the way to the Supreme Court. So that's a long way off before it would ever get to the Supreme Court. But hey, we've been here before. Remember 2000? But it's going to be very difficult for President Trump to try to argue that he's the winner if Pennsylvania goes fully and there's a majority of votes. Look, I get the states where there's going to be an automatic recount. Georgia is sitting right there already in an automatic recount with 0.5%. That's where it triggers. Wisconsin as well. If it's less than 1%, the loser can automatically request a recount. They've already leaned in that direction. So we're going to start to see a lot of this over the next 24, 48 hours, more of this. And it's not being helped at all by President Trump coming out saying that he wants this to, that we should stop the vote. His supporters have been out there at these different poll locations, stop the vote. But then when they go to Arizona, they're saying continue to count the vote. Isn't that funny?
I was going to say, at least this time we don't have to hear the word hanging Chad.
Yeah. Yeah, remember that in Florida, of course, when you had all those guys with the little binoculars or the little monocles, like the Monopoly guy looking at those ballots. Like, is this one hanging or not? It was so ridiculous. Remember the pregnant Chad? That was my favorite. Pregnant Chad. Which was literally, someone meant to vote for Gore and they didn't push it all the way through, so it was pregnant. Does that count? No. Same thing with a hanging Chad. It didn't break off, so it's just hanging there. Do we count that? Amazing. Amazing that it comes down to like 500 votes, in Florida. Every vote counts. Unbelievable. So, if we still have this sort of post-mortem, I'm still fascinated to look at these numbers. There was not a blue wave. There was going to be this tsunami. By the way, today is National Tsunami Awareness Day. Just want to bring that to your attention. I'm doing my part. Are you doing yours to bring awareness to tsunamis? So I'm going to try to use tsunami as much as I can in today's show to bring awareness about that they exist. So there was no big blue wave. There was no big blue tsunami. And if we look at the Senate right now, I think it's really important for us to take a look at these Senate numbers. We still don't know. We still don't know and have a clear decision as to who is going to be the majority leader of the Senate. We don't know if it's going to be the Republicans or Democrats. It's leaning Republican at this moment, but it looks like we are headed to recounts and runoff elections in Georgia, 2 of them. So let me go through these numbers in the Senate. I think that this is really interesting. There are 6 seats currently up for grabs, toss-ups at this moment, that are really still not called yet. So if you look at Maine, Susan Collins was in a tight race in Maine, but it didn't end up being that tight, but it still is not called yet. Her challenger, Gideon, called her up and said, look, I concede, but because of ranked choice voting in the state of Maine, this could actually change things. So we don't yet know who the winner is in Maine. Susan Collins has the lead. She's hovering around 51%, but because of ranked choice voting, we don't know. So again, keep your eyes on Maine. North Carolina was the most expensive U.S. Senate election in history. The amount of money spent there. Tom Tillis, still close. He's up, but not called yet. Arizona, Mark Kelly. Looks like he's going to win as a Democrat. That would be one of the few seats to flip in Arizona. So this is like the ghost of John McCain, Like, we did it. We're going to needle Trump from the grave, So Mark Kelly, astronaut Mark Kelly, that one's that's not signed, sealed, and delivered just yet, as these late votes are still being counted. So these things are not in the can yet. Georgia, this is the most important state right now, and this is where Republicans are nervous, is in the state of Georgia, because as these votes continue to come in, we right now still don't know, at least in the presidency, we still don't know, and we're still waiting for these votes to be counted. 99% of these expected votes are in, but some of these heavily Democratic districts still haven't counted their votes. So this was Trump leading and now is trending Biden as the hours go on. What does that mean for David Perdue? He's still leading in Georgia, but his lead is barely above the runoff threshold, meaning they have to have a significant victory. Otherwise, they will have a runoff election in January. We already know there's going to be a runoff election in Georgia for the other Senate seat. That's Raphael Warnock versus Kelly Loeffler. They're going to have a runoff in January. So Georgia could have both of its Senate seats in a runoff election in January. And we won't know who will be, if these two seats end up going blue, there you go. Now, remember, if Biden wins, Kamala Harris becomes the tie-breaking vote in the Senate. So this magic number for Democrats to actually flip the Senate is 4, right? But really it would go down to 3 if Biden wins, because then Kamala becomes the tie-breaking vote in the Senate as the vice president of the United States. So this is what it comes down to. It's fascinating. Dems, need these 4 pickups, and they only lead right now in one of these races. But Georgia, all eyes on Georgia and these runoff elections. So there you go. Susan Collins, Mark Kelly, David Perdue, Raphael Warnock, and Tom Tillis, probably biting their nails this morning. That's a look at the Senate. So again, looking at some of these poll numbers, I mentioned this in the pre-show a little bit, but some of the exit polls at this hour, and as we're paying attention to who voted for whom in this election, one out of every five black men in the United States voted for Trump. Now, just pay attention to these numbers for a second. 13% for the GOP in 2016 voted for Trump. 13% of black men, specifically black men, voted for Trump in 2016. And now you would have thought with Black Lives Matter, you would have thought with the George Floyd protests, everything that unfolded, right? He's the quote unquote racist president. He's a narcissist. He's a racist. All of that. They would have all gone over to the Democrats, maybe just by default. At least that's what Democrats always hope, right? We're here just by default. So come on over. We'll take you for granted. You're going to come home and vote for Papa Joe anyway, right? Not so. Trump increased this election the number of black men who voted for him this time over 2016. Went from 13% up to 18%. That means that nearly 1 out of every 5 black men in America voted for Trump. I guess just taking the black vote for granted doesn't work. What about women? Black women. 4% of black women in 2016 voted for Trump. 4%. Trump doubled the number of black women that voted for him this time. 8% of black women. Doubled. 1 out of every 10 black women in the United States voted for Trump. Again, Biden might win, but my point is what a horrible campaign Democrats have run. That they have not been able to that the fact that black men and black women in larger numbers than in 2016 went to Trump this time around. President Trump, who's rolled back workers' rights in this country, slashed Obama era regulations, slashed President Obama's affordable housing initiatives. Both parties, I think, are not in the can, are not there to help the workers, not there to help the environment.
Could you imagine if there would have been a Ralph Nader this round? Like somebody like that was
right.
Actually, making moves. Like this would have been the perfect year for a viable third party.
Yeah, but you can't have a third party. You can't have a third party, Dave, when these guys spend millions of dollars to keep you off a ballot and just fight you like crazy, like Democrats did to keep Howie Hawkins, the Green Party candidate, off the ballot in Pennsylvania. Just pouring millions of dollars, and it all comes from Wall Street donations. All of these Hollywood Jeffrey Katzenberg types that pour millions of dollars into these campaigns because they don't want an outside voice. They don't want someone to rock the boat like a Ralph Nader or a Ross Perot. The only reason Ross Perot got as far as he got is because he used his own money. He was a billionaire. I like to bring this analogy up from time to time because I think it's important. Like Ross Perot is the only viable third-party candidate that we've had in the last, as far as I can remember, 1992. Many people believe that Bill Clinton won because of Ross Perot siphoning off a number of those conservative votes from George H.W. Bush. But before that, we have to go back to the Bull Moose Party, the Bull Moose candidacy of Theodore Roosevelt, who, by the way, was a 2-term president and one of the most popular presidents in American history. He takes 4 years off and then decides to run again, not as a Republican, but as a Bull Moose candidate. He still lost. Isn't that crazy? He's on Mount Rushmore. He ran as a third-party candidate and couldn't win. People are asking me some good books to read. Read the Edmund. If you're interested in Theodore Roosevelt, my favorite president, you've got to read the Edmund Morris, like my last name, Edmund Morris. There's 3 books that he wrote on Theodore Roosevelt over his life. The first book he wrote won the Pulitzer Prize, called The Rise of Theodore Roosevelt. So good. But it just goes to show you that if you're not part of one of these two parties, you're not going to win.
Or a billionaire, because that's the thing. Joe Biden,
or a billionaire.
Yeah, Joe Biden really didn't have to do anything this election. He didn't have to make any promises. He just automatically got it and didn't have to like cater to anybody. Like refuse Bernie Sanders' demands, like all of it.
He didn't have a platform. I mean, what is his platform? Can anyone even like tell me what he really stands for? So at the beginning of the campaign, he's against fracking. Then as the campaign unfolds and he realizes he needs Pennsylvania, he's now for fracking because he doesn't want to lose those votes in Pennsylvania. What on healthcare? What are you going to have some sort of a public option that you should have had before, but now it's not really a public option. You're going to be just subsidizing insurance companies. So big insurance is happy about it because they're just going to get a ton of money from the federal government. Where are you on foreign wars? You're not going to reduce. In fact, you're going to increase our footprint in the Middle East. What about Social Security? He's over the years wanted to slash Social Security. Now he's kind of in favor of it, but he knows he needs that for votes. But he really, in his heart, wants to increase the age for Social Security. Where are you on a minimum wage? No one really knows. But with Bernie Sanders, at least we knew Medicare for all. Fix this environmental crisis and catastrophe, reduce our carbon footprint in the United States. We're killing ourselves. And by the way, hundreds of climate scientists all agree that we have about 15 more years. There's like the tipping point moment for us to get this under control.
Well,
by the way, that dropped
times
down in the exit polls.
Well, and so many times Biden's been given the opportunity to retract or at least speak to why he made, because he's been a politician since the 70s and he's stood firm and said, right. No, I would do it again. Like they've lobbed him soft. You wouldn't do that again, right? You wouldn't write that bill again. No, I love that bill. He's
right.
had so many opportunities and he just doubles down.
That's right. Yeah, he's had so many opportunities. These softball questions from this, the liberal media, they're like, you didn't really mean the crime bill, Joe, right? Like, would you really have gone to Iraq? Would you really have done these things? Would you really have supported creating 7 more wars with President Obama? Would you have really supported building those cages at the border, which, by the way, was true? Those were built under the Obama administration that separated families. So no wonder people are they're saying, you know what? Maybe the devil I know is worse than the devil I don't. And at least under President Trump, I saw my payroll taxes cut. So I've got more money in my paycheck. 1 out of every 5 black men in the United States voted for Trump. And it's interesting, too, when you look at women. You think, all these suburban wine drinking women are going to go for Biden, right? They love Hollywood. They're going to go for Biden. The United States in the exit polls, a majority of white women voted for Trump. I guess it turns out the Democratic strategy of only going after college educated white women didn't work. Turns out only 1 out of every 3 women in America actually have a college degree. So going after that elite strategy, I guess, didn't work. Now, I'm not saying he's not going to win. I'm saying he probably will win. But I'm saying look at the Democratic Party at large. They did not win. And you had a number of people who just completely, the mainstream media, they were all in on the idea that just about, I think my wife and I, we were watching like a comedy bit. What was it on, was it a Daily Show bit or something where, it was a Jimmy Kimmel bit, right? Where, oh yeah, it was like they were going out interviewing. It was a black reporter, man on the street, going out and interviewing as many black individuals as they could find. Are you going to vote? Not one of them in their segment was going to vote for Trump. And all of these black voters were saying, I don't know anyone that's going to vote for Trump. Of course, they're interviewing him in Los Angeles. But nevertheless, this was the mainstream media message. Black Lives Matter. There's no way. Latino vote, by the way.
Well, and I felt personally that it was kind of a slap in the face to the Black Lives Matter movement to have a guy that wrote the crime bill that disproportionately incarcerates black people. Like,
right. I heard some really interesting and some compelling rallies and protests. One I listened to, a black woman at a protest was really impassioned. I should play it here on the show if I can find it. But she's saying, we need to wake up. We need something new in this country. We're going to vote. We're being told as black voters to just be in the can for Joe Biden, guy who wrote the crime bill, guy that incarcerated. This crime bill allowed more incarcerations in the United States than in all of American history because of the 1994 crime bill that you championed. Like looking for an opportunity to come out, like to your point, and say, I'm sorry, this was a disaster. And looking for ways to maybe heal that instead of trying to sweep it under the rug. Again, he'll probably win. But there's a reckoning for the Democratic Party. And then here's what's going to happen. They're going to try this again, unless there's a wholesale rebuilding of the Democratic Party over the next 4 years. But it's not going to happen because all of these Washington elites, all of these big money donors, they like the system the way it is. They'd rather try to keep the Green Party off the ballots, chisel away at votes from other parties, instead of actually trying to extend their tent. So in 4 years, they're going to do the same thing. They're going to trot out the same message. They're going to do the same thing over and over again. And there's going to be nothing new. Maybe they'll add healthcare in just to boot. But there's going to be nothing new. It'll be the same thing. I mean, like I said yesterday, the definition of insanity is repeating something over and over and expecting a different result. And they just keep wondering. So they repeated 2016 and 2020. They rolled out the same Hillary platform. And they wonder why the results are the same. In fact, worse. And in Pennsylvania, Hillary Clinton performed better than Joe Biden did in a number of different counties. Hillary Clinton? Man. Yeah, that's your home state, Joe. Scranton Joe. So you might win. And it's not just about winning at this point. Like we squeaked by. If you have a compelling message, it should be a landslide.